So let's start this. So biodiversity itself, right? Looked at that video. So understanding biodiversity, we know that biodiversity refers to the variety of life in all its forms, including the diversity of species, genetic variation within species, and the range of ecosystems they form. That's a lovely definition of biodiversity. We're not talking about only diversity within species. We're not talking about variations in species. We're not talking about just the ecosystems being different. We're talking about all of that combined. Diversity is essential for the stability and resilience of ecosystems, providing critical services such as pollination, nutrient cycling, and climate regulation. That's biodiversity there. We have genetic diversity, right? So it speaks to the variety of genes within a genome in a species, right? We looked at this in Unit 1 biology. Shouldn't be an issue at this point. So this diversity allows populations to adapt by changing and adapt to changing environments, right? So if there's a slight change in environment, these genetically diverse species can bounce back. So it aids the resilience, right, and the resilience of the and resistance, right, of the ecosystem. So it enhances survival rates and contributes to overall health of the species. So an example could be agricultural crops. So different varieties of crops like rice, maize, and wheat have been developed through selective breeding, incorporating a wide range of genetic traits. This genetic diversity is crucial for breeding programs to develop disease resistance and climate tolerant varieties, ensuring food security. Right, so that's one thing that we can gain from biodiversity. There are other things that are there as well, right? When different organisms are will gain different traits, right? That's, let's say, that allow them to be disease resistant. When disease sweeps across now, some of them will continue to live because they have that trait, right? If some are more suited to different types of climates, when the climate change, some of the species will still survive. So we're looking at those type of stuff, right? As I said, this is really done in Unit 1 biology, all right? Species diversity. No, species diversity is really about the abundance of different species, right, that exist within one general ecosystem. So tropical rainforests are a good example. So the Amazon rainforest is home to estimate over 390 billion individual trees and 16,000 different species. So notice that it's a highly dense area of different species, right? So the immense species diversity includes a wide range of mammals, birds, insects, and plants, each playing a unique role in the ecosystem. And that is why we need species diversity, because all ecological niches need to be met. So when you destroy a species or remove a keystone species, right? A keystone species is a species that is very important to the stability of an ecosystem, and when removed can contribute to the collapse of an ecosystem. When you remove a keystone species, right? It removes a species itself, or an organism that did or played a specific role, or filled a ecological niche, right? So now that niche is not met, right? So it's either that niche needs to be replaced, right, by another organism, or if it is not replaced, it could be a detriment to the entire ecosystem. So speaking about that, species diversity is quite important, right? You have also ecosystem diversity, right, which refers to the variety of ecosystems within a given region. So this encompasses different habitats, communities, and ecological processes, right? So if you look at coral reefs, wetlands, and forests, right, Australia's Great Barrier Reefs and the Everglades in Florida, right, all of these areas, the Amazon rainforests, right, each represent different distinct ecosystems, right? So the Great Barrier Reef supports marine life, the Everglades support a unique wetland habitat, right? The Amazon hosts diverse terrestrial species and complex ecological interactions. So you're looking at ecosystem diversity, you increase the range of species that can exist within a specific area. It explicitly dictates the species that can exist in the area, right? Because you won't find cows in a marine ecosystem, right? And you won't find lionfish in an arboreal ecosystem. So it speaks specifically to the species that can appear within that area, right? And when one region has high ecosystem diversity, that increases a wide range of species that can possibly be found in that simple area. Right? So that lens for the continents of South Africa and Africa. Well, not South Africa, South America. Oh my gosh. All right, South America, right, and Africa. being the most biodiverse, right, places on the entire planet, right? Because of their position, right, and their size, right? So they span across multiple ecosystems, right, and host a variety of species, right? So within South Africa and Africa combined, right, they have more species diversity than all other areas on the planet combined, right? So they're really important to the biodiversity on the Earth itself, right? So the importance of biodiversity. Why is biodiversity important? Why is it important to keep balance within the ecosystems across the Earth, right? Can anybody tell me why biodiversity is important before we move on? Why is it important?
So, for ecological stability, as we mentioned earlier,
So ecological stability. Anything else? I'm just looking for ideas. You know, some person might have a different idea, a different perspective on looking at it. So if you want to share your perspective, you share it. All right. Okay. In the interest of time, I guess we move on. If you want to share it, you can share it in the chat, and I'll be able to see it. All right. So let's look at this. So the importance of biodiversity, right? We're looking at the sustainability of ecosystems, right, via ecological stability, right? So it ensures that ecosystems can provide essential services such as food, clean water, and air, right, and supports human livelihood, right? Really, ecosystems, right? Why I put this here, right? I'm gonna scrutinize that phrase there, right? The ecosystems are not diverse for us. They're not diverse for humans. They would exist most beautifully and be even better without humans, right? Humans are specific species of mammals within, right, the chordata phylum that have a particular amount of narcissism to them that cannot be shaken, right? Humans are so narcissistic where they believe that the ecosystem is diverse so they can use it, right? That's not the case, right? The earth will be much better off without all of us here, right? Without humans themselves being here, right? But without that, high biodiversity increased ecosystem productivity and stability, making them more resilient to disturbances like climate change and invasive species, right? How does climate change and invasive species come about and be propelled, right? By humans, right? So we could look at that. So what we are doing to the environment, right, is the reason why the environment needs to be biodiverse in the first place, right? To defend against all human impacts, right? And some natural impacts as well. So, intrinsic benefits of biodiversity. What are the intrinsic benefits of biodiversity? Can anybody let me know? Give me one intrinsic benefit. There's intrinsic and direct benefit and indirect benefit. Three different classes of benefits. Alright. Don't know if I'm going to get any responses. So aesthetic value, lovely. Ecological stability, lovely. Alright. So let's look at these, right? So we're looking at aesthetic value, cultural significance, those type of things, intrinsic values, right? So let's look at this, right? The ecological stability is a part of biodiversity, you know. So is it a benefit? Sure. Let's say that. All right, let's use that. I'm gonna use that one, right? So let's look at moral and ethical value. Many people believe that all species have an inherent right to exist, regardless of their utility to humans. This ethical standpoint argues that humans have a responsibility to protect and to preserve other forms of life, right? So looking at the, go ahead.
to say would protecting endemic species come under this too?
The importance of it.
Like
Um,
we come under moral and ethical because they are protect species
yeah, we come
like
under that.
okay.
Yeah, we come under that, right? So we're looking at that. We're looking at that it promotes, right, that type of more ethical approach from humans, right? So this is just one of the representatives from the United Arab Emirates, right, speaking at the United Nations conference on climate change and how it is affecting the region, right, the Middle East, right? So we're looking at that, the moral ethical value of biodiversity. We're looking at aesthetic value, right? Because if the ecosystem diversity look pretty, That's generally it, right? Biodiversity contributes to the beauty and wonder of the natural world. The variety of life forms and ecosystems provides inspiration, joy, and a sense of awe, which is important for human well-being and quality of life. Right? So we have all of these different things. Some persons may argue, right, if all ecosystems are, downtrodden and climate change ramps up into different types of, issues, and ecosystems get degraded, rather, right? And some persons might argue, why should we be here, right? What is the use of living if we cannot live properly, or increase, or live in a ecosystem or on a planet that allows us to live naturally in the way we are, right? Imagine being born into a world where life support is something that you need, because your entire oxygen percentage of the atmosphere, half of it is taken by chlorofluorocarbons. Imagine those type of things, right? So the increasing quality of life and well-being is important, right? For an intrinsic importance of biodiversity. You can speak about that, right? You could speak about it apart, separate and apart from aesthetic value as well, right? Increasing quality of life and well-being. For organisms in general, an example of them could be humans, right? The more you do biology, you realize that, okay, you're not special. So humans are an example of the mammals that will benefit from biodiversity, right? So we have that as well. Cultural significance. Many cultures around the world have deep connections with their natural environments and biodiversity within them. Species and ecosystems often hold cultural, spiritual, and historical significance, form an integral part of cultural identity and heritage, right? Some cultures are connected directly to the land in which they originated. This has a sociological significance, right, for biodiversity. All right, so we have that as well, especially within the Aboriginal people and the Maori people of New Zealand and Australia. It has a very, very important. It's very, very important to their cultures, right? So as governments continue different programs destroying the ecosystem, these cultures are being lost because their entire land, their environments themselves have been, taken by the government and completely destroyed, right? So we have those issues as well. Scientific and educational value is also there, so it provides countless opportunities for scientific research and education. Studying different species and ecosystem enhances our understanding of life processes, ecological interactions, and evolutionary patterns, contributing to knowledge and innovation. It's very important, right? So I know that you guys probably know David Attenborough. If you don't know the name, you know the voice, right? He narrates Blue Earth and those type of things, those documentaries that you see, right? Even though it's documentaries and you might sit down and you just watch the documentaries, right, that he produces, right, it is all stored in scientific and educational knowledge, right? So this knowledge that is taken from viewing the field itself and studying it as an ecologist, right, can contribute to some amount of scientific knowledge and educational value, right? And I think it would be cool to be an ecologist, get paid to travel to every ecosystem on the planet to sit and look at animals with a percentage chance of dying from them, but that's just a side effect of the job, right? So we have that there. Direct benefits of biodiversity, right? Medicine, right? A significant portion of pharmaceuticals are derived from natural compounds found in plants and animals and microorganisms, right? For instance, rose periwinkle, right? Catharanthus roseus, right? Has provided important cancer treating drugs like vincristine and vinblastine, right? You also have different things like retinol from marijuana. You have different plants that provide different things, right? Um, all the different herbs that your Caribbean parents and grandparents use for different things. There are chemicals stored within these plants that assist us to heal, right, from all these different types of ailments. So there's a reason why bush tea fix almost everything, because bush tea is medicine, right? So our biodiversity will continue. The continuation of these species allow them to exist, allow them to complexify and create different species, so we can gain medical we can use them for medical instrumentation, basically, right? To extract the different chemicals from these natural occurring plants, right, and figure out how they can be used. All right. So even UA Mona has a Natural Products Institute where they, which is a part which really works with the chemistry department, right, as well as Somamon, the biochemistry department, right, to really look at that. It's a individual institute, by the way, right, that they use to create different types of things. I think they create different types of soaps and different, a lot of different things can be created. It's not only medicine, but it can be used for economic value, right, as we can create different things, right, from these areas, right. So natural products generally, biodiversity is a source of a wide array of natural products used in everyday life, including foods, fibers, fuels. Right, so the three F's: food, fiber, and fuel. Right, so the fibers can be used to create clothes and different materials, etc. Right, furniture, those type of stuff. Food is obvious, very very obvious. Fuels, right? We can use these things to create different types of biofuels that may be more beneficial to the environment, right? And we have building materials there. For example, tropical forests are rich in timber, rubber, and fruits, right? So rubber can be used in industrial processes via the vulcanization of rubber using sulfur. I'm so sorry, I have to mention chemistry at every waking moment. And then timber can be used for creation of buildings, etc. Right? And fruits are fruits, right? They contain vitamins and trace minerals and etc. that can be used for human nutrition, right? Agricultural diversity. So genetic diversity within crops and livestock is essential for food security, right? So it enables the development of new varieties of that can withstand pests, diseases, and changing environmental conditions. For instance, genetic diversity of wheat has allowed for the development of different strains, right, resistant to the rust disease. So rust disease is a thing that makes wheat kind of produce less. It makes this weird orangish reddish color on the wheat. So you could think about that, right? So biodiversity for agriculture and food security as well. But in case of environment, right, environmental, destruction, in type of um, disaster, man-made or human, or well, man-made or natural disaster, the agricultural sector can bounce back if there's a lot of genetic diversity and biodiversity, right? So imagine you're living on a Caribbean island, there is no genetic diversity, a disease enter the island and all the food on the island just lie flat, right? That means that the humans will follow suit. So we need genetic diversity within the agricultural sector. We need biodiversity generally, right? So if anything happens, some crops do survive, right? The crops are able to withstand these changes. Therefore, food security is a very important thing that can be gained from this. Okay, tourism as well, right? So biodiversity rich areas attract tourists, generating significant revenue and supporting local economies. Ecotourism, which focuses on experiencing natural areas, promotes conservation and provide economic incentives to preserve biodiversity. For example, the diverse wildlife of the Serengeti in Tanzania is a major draw for tourists, right? And some of the time, these tourism revenue can be used to maintain these wild areas that the tourists will come and see. All right. So the indirect benefits of biodiversity. No, I think it's the last benefits of biodiversity, right? Ecosystem services, right? So biodiversity underpin different types of services that we could look at. So support for human life, right? Such as pollination of crops, purification of air and water, regulation of the climate. So these ecosystems can actually help to regulate these things, the ecosystem themselves, right? So the more we remove large swaths of the, let's say, for example, the Amazon rainforest, right, the less the earth will be able to counteract climate change, right? So the South American governments can continue to cut down all the trees, lay them flat, and then pour them into industries. And then after a while, right, they're not gonna have enough water purification to provide water for the entire country, and climate change will certainly be the end of South America, right? So we could look at those type of things, right? So destroying the ecosystems is just emboldening, right, all of these issues, right? Climate change and air pollution, water pollution to continue, right? So the more we remove the ecosystems, more we destroy them, is the more we, assist in nailing the final nail into the coffin, basically. All right. Resistance to environmental changes. So ecosystems with high biodiversity are more resistant to, or resilient rather, to these disturbances such as climate change, invasive species, and natural disasters. One question: What is an invasive species?
An invasive species is any species that is not native to the environment and has a detrimental effect on it.
Okay,
And
lovely.
it cannot be controlled by the and creatures that are native to the environment.
Okay, so it cannot be controlled. So they enter the environment, they don't have any natural predators, so they continue to feed and feed and feed, multiplying, creating an issue in the environment. Right? So this resilience helps to maintain ecosystem stability and functionality, ensuring continued provision of ecosystem services. So ecosystem services, when they mention it, sound kind of weird, but they're all they're really looking at is resistance to climate change, right? Resistance to invasive species and natural disasters, those type of things, right? Aiding in water purification, air purification, those type of things, right? Soil fertility and health now, right? We're generally looking at that. So diversity contributes to soil formation and that nutrient cycling. So there's more nutrient cycling, right? So we have diverse soil organisms such as bacteria, fungi, and earthworms play a crucial role in decomposing organic matter and enriching the soil. That's one there. And we also have water regulation and quality there as one general thing. So biodiverse systems help to regulate the water cycle, reducing the risk of floods and maintaining water quality. Alright? So species diversity and ecosystem stability, this is another portion of the syllabus that they want us to look at. I know it is a lot. It is a lot. You have a lot. This is a lot of information. Alright. So let's have a look at this, right? Let's run through these then. Right? So species diversity and ecosystem stability. So the overview here, right? Species diversity is critical to the is a critical component here. So what we're basically saying, if there are more species, right, then the ecosystem is capable of withstanding any type of issues, right? Because all ecological niches, right, are met. Right? So if we don't have enough species, not all the niches are met, therefore you're gonna have some amount of issue. So diverse ecosystems tend to have multiple species performing the same niche, providing redundancy, and redundancy helps to maintain ecological balance. So when one individual species is impacted, another one can carry on the ecological niche. So we're looking at that. So redundancy and resilience there. So ecosystems with high species diversity have multiple species. We'll look at that, right? Fulfill the similar ecological roles, and that is known as functional redundancy, right? So it means that if one species declines, others can take up the weight, right? So coral reefs in the Caribbean, right? For example, here this is the Belize Great Barrier Reef, right? So a little bit off the coast of Belize. So the coral reefs are home to numerous fish species that graze on algae, right? If a particular fish species declines due to overfishing or disease, other algae grazing species can prevent algae overgrowth. Right, that's an example there. Complex food webs are important, right? So this is how the species diversity helps with resilience, right? So higher species diversity leads to more complex food webs and which distribute energy and nutrients more efficiently, right, across the ecosystem, right? So it prevents the food web from being likely to collapse, right? So for example, within the mangrove ecosystems, right, it's a picture of the mangroves in the Palisados in Jamaica, right? Mangrove forests in the Caribbean support diverse communities of fish, crustaceans, and birds. Right, so the intricate food webs in these ecosystems help distribute resources and maintain ecological balance, supporting both terrestrial and marine life. In this case, we have adaptive capacity. What is that? That's interesting. So diverse ecosystems can better adapt to environmental changes, as we noted before. Right? So if we have any type genetic variation within the environment specifically, we have different types of the same species or variations within the species, right? It allows for better diversity. Well, it allows it's increases diversity, of course, across the ecosystem, right? And allows for a broader range of responses to changing conditions. So it enhances the overall adaptability or resilience of the ecosystem, right? So, for example, the seagrass beds that span across the general Caribbean Sea, right, are home to a variety of marine life, right? So, if there are any disturbances here, right, the diverse species will inhibit all of them, right? So, different species contribute to sediment stabilization, nutrient cycling, and habitat provision, etc. Right? So we have all of those things there. Factors important to maintaining species diversity, right? This is really continuing that. Hold on. Okay. So let's look at the factors, right? So maintaining species diversity requires addressing various environmental, social, and economic factors, right? So effective conservation strategies include protecting the habitats, maintaining human impacts, right? And fostering sustainable practices. So what we're going to be looking at is ways in which we conserve, right? So these are the conservation efforts that we're going to be looking at really for our species diversity, right? So habitat protection and restoration, right? So marine protected areas are important, right? And this is this is, for example, here with the Holchan Marine Reserve in Belize. Why am I giving Caribbean examples? Because the syllabus asked for Caribbean examples. So we're looking at that. So we're looking at these protected areas which are crucial for maintaining marine diversity or marine biodiversity within the Caribbean. We also have controlling invasive species like the lionfish management that is across the entire Caribbean. Right? So invasive lionfish poses rather a significant threat to Caribbean marine ecosystems. Right? They prey on everything. They eat everything, yet nothing eats it. That's the problem. So efforts to control lionfish populations, including organized culling, right? So people will go out and just kill a bunch of lionfish and get paid for it, right? Promoting lionfish as a food source, so lionfish can be eaten, right? And help protect native biodiversity and ecosystem stability. We also have sustainable fishing practices that are the fishery management in the Bahamas is an example, right? So where they're looking at catch limits, seasonal closures, and protected breeding areas, right? So to help maintain the fish populations, right? So we have that there. We also have climate change mitigation and adaptation. So we have coral restoration projects, right? So since climate change poses a significant threat to Caribbean coral reefs, leading to coral bleaching and habitat loss, coral restoration projects such as the one in the Dominican Republic involve growing and transplanting resilient coral species. So what they do, they take sections of coral, right? They engineer them whether by selective breeding or etc. Right? And what they do is grow them in laboratories. And once they grow to a sufficient size, then they transplant them and put them into the reef, right? To help to regrow coral reefs in place where they have been lost, right? And also we just have general community engagement and education. So if ecotourism is rampant, right, within St. Lucia. So I use St. Lucia as the example here. Right, so engaging local communities in conservation efforts and promoting ecotourism can foster a sense of stewardship and provide economic incentives for protecting biodiversity. Right? So in St. Lucia specifically, right, one of their initiatives is to educate the visitors, right, on the importance of biodiversity and supporting conservation efforts with and sustainable development, right? So that's what they generally do there. And then we have pollution control, which should be general across the Caribbean nations, right? So reducing pollution, that's a very important thing, right? So reducing pollution, particularly plastics and agricultural runoff, right? Because all the fertilizers and pesticides that you use in agriculture can run off into marine ecosystems and affect them, right? So that can affect the diversity in the marine and terrestrial ecosystems. So Caribbean nations like Barbados are implementing management programs to reduce pollution and protect coastal and marine biodiversity. All right. So that's really it. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at is conservation, in situ and ex situ conservation.